In the heart of a bustling city, where cobblestone streets echoed with the hurried footsteps of merchants and townsfolk, stood a grand courthouse. Its tall pillars and intricate carvings spoke of centuries of justice served within its walls. Inside, Judge Eleanor Hart sat at her bench, her sharp eyes scanning the room. Known for her no-nonsense attitude and razor-sharp mind, she commanded respect from everyone who entered her courtroom. Today, however, an unusual case awaited her. A royal guard named Marcus Kane had been summoned to face charges for parking his horse-drawn carriage illegally in front of a busy market square. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as Marcus entered, his polished armor gleaming under the sunlight streaming through stained-glass windows. His presence was imposing, but it wasn't just his uniform that drew attention. It was the calmness he exuded, standing tall yet relaxed despite being on trial. The charge seemed minor. Parking violations were common enough, but the fact that a royal guard, someone sworn to uphold order, was involved made it intriguing. Some people leaned forward in their seats, eager to see how this would unfold. When the proceedings began, the prosecutor presented the evidence. Witnesses testified that Marcus's carriage had blocked traffic, causing chaos during peak hours. Photos of the scene showed the vehicle parked squarely in a restricted zone. The facts appeared straightforward, leaving little room for doubt. Judge Hart listened intently, occasionally jotting notes on her pad. When it came time for her ruling, she didn't hesitate. "You've violated the ordinance," she declared firmly, issuing the standard fine. Her tone brooked no argument, and most expected Marcus to simply accept the penalty and leave. But then something unexpected happened. Before the bailiff could escort him out, Marcus raised a hand politely and asked, "Your Honor, may I address the court?" His voice was steady, carrying a quiet authority that silenced the murmurs in the room. Judge Hart arched an eyebrow, intrigued by his audacity. "Very well," she said, leaning back slightly in her chair. She gestured for him to proceed, curious about what he might say. What followed left everyone stunned. Marcus launched into a detailed explanation of why the ordinance shouldn't apply to him, or rather, why it needed reinterpretation when applied to members of the Royal Guard acting in official capacity. He cited obscure clauses from municipal law, referencing cases decades old that few even remembered existed. His words flowed smoothly, each point building upon the last, painting a picture of legal nuance that caught everyone off guard. Even Judge Hart found herself leaning forward now, her pen frozen midair as she absorbed his arguments. The courtroom fell silent except for Marcus's measured voice. Lawyers seated in the gallery exchanged glances, some scribbling notes furiously, while others simply stared in disbelief. Here was a man whose profession revolved around protecting the realm, yet he spoke like someone who had spent years poring over dusty law books. Despite his eloquence, Judge Hart ultimately upheld her decision, reasoning that rules were meant to apply equally to all. Yet, as Marcus handed over the payment for the fine, there was no trace of bitterness in his expression. Instead, he offered her a small, knowing smile, a look that lingered long after he turned and walked out of the room. That moment stayed with Judge Hart long after the day ended. Something about Marcus's demeanor gnawed at her curiosity. Who was this man? Was he truly just a royal guard, or was there more beneath the surface? Little did she know, this encounter would set off a chain of events neither of them could have anticipated. As the courtroom emptied and the murmurs of the crowd faded into the distance, Judge Eleanor Hart sat alone at her bench, replaying Marcus Kane's words in her mind. His calm demeanor and precise legal arguments had been unlike anything she'd encountered before. Most defendants either accepted their penalties without question or tried to plead ignorance. But Marcus, he had approached the situation with a level of confidence and knowledge that felt almost calculated. It wasn't arrogance. It was something else entirely. Preparation, perhaps, or an innate understanding of the law that bordered on brilliance. The prosecutor lingered near the judge's bench, shaking his head as he gathered his papers. "Did you hear that, Your Honor?" he asked, half-jokingly. "I think we just got schooled by a royal guard." Judge Hart gave him a wry smile, but said nothing. Her thoughts were racing. How did someone like Marcus, a man whose primary duty involved protecting the king and maintaining order, acquire such a deep understanding of municipal ordinances? It didn't add up. Curiosity tugged at her, and she decided then and there that she needed answers. Later that evening, Judge Hart retreated to her private chambers, which doubled as a library stacked with legal texts, case files, and handwritten notes from decades of service. She pulled out a ledger containing records of past cases involving members of the Royal Guard. As she flipped through the pages, one thing became clear. Disputes involving guards usually ended quickly, often resolved with a fine or a warning. Rarely did they delve into complex legal arguments. Yet Marcus had done exactly that, and with remarkable precision. Her search led her to an old article tucked away in the archives, detailing the history of the Kane family. To her surprise, she discovered that Marcus came from a long line of esteemed barristers who had served the crown for generations. His ancestors weren't just lawyers, they were renowned jurists who had shaped many of the kingdom's foundational laws. But Marcus himself had chosen a different path, enlisting as a royal guard instead of following in his family's footsteps. The article speculated that his decision stemmed from a desire to serve directly on the front lines of justice rather than behind a desk. Still, it seemed unlikely that he would abandon his heritage completely. Determined to learn more, Judge Hart reached out to a mutual acquaintance, a retired magistrate who occasionally advised the royal court. Over tea the next afternoon, she casually mentioned Marcus's name. The magistrate's eyes lit up immediately. "Ah, Marcus Kane," he said with a knowing chuckle. "He's quite the character, isn't he? Don't let the armor fool you. He's sharper than most barristers I know." When pressed for details, the magistrate explained that Marcus spent countless hours studying legal texts during his off-duty time. Whether it was poring over ancient statutes or debating hypothetical cases with fellow guards, Marcus treated law not as a profession but as a passion. Judge Hart couldn't help but feel a growing admiration for the man. Here was someone who could have easily pursued a prestigious career in law, but chose instead to dedicate himself to service. And yet, he hadn't abandoned his intellectual pursuits. He carried them with him, like a hidden weapon ready to be unsheathed when needed. She wondered how many others underestimated him, dismissing him as just another soldier in shiny armor. Her curiosity soon turned into action. A few days later, Judge Hart sent Marcus a formal invitation to attend a private legal symposium she was hosting. These events were typically reserved for the brightest minds in the field, lawyers, scholars, and judges. But she felt compelled to include him. After all, if what she'd seen in her courtroom was any indication, Marcus deserved a seat at the table. When the invitation arrived, Marcus read it carefully, his lips curling into a faint smile. He knew this was Judge Hart's way of acknowledging his skills and perhaps testing them further. For a moment, he considered declining. His place was with the Royal Guard, not in academic circles. But something about the gesture intrigued him. Maybe it was the challenge, or maybe it was the chance to prove that justice wasn't confined to courtrooms. Whatever the reason, he accepted the invitation, setting the stage for what promised to be an unforgettable encounter. Word of Marcus Kane's performance in Judge Hart's courtroom spread like wildfire through the city. By the next morning, it seemed everyone, from street vendors to high-ranking officials, was talking about the Royal Guard who outsmarted the law. Lawyers gathered in dimly lit taverns, sipping ale as they debated how a man whose primary job was wielding a sword could possess such a deep understanding of legal intricacies. Some dismissed it as luck, while others insisted there must be more to his story. Theories abounded. Perhaps he had trained under a legendary jurist, or maybe he'd spent years secretly attending lectures at the university. Whatever the truth, one thing was certain. Marcus had left an indelible mark on those who witnessed his argument. Judge Eleanor Hart found herself caught up in the whirlwind of speculation. Everywhere she went, people approached her with questions. "Is it true he cited laws no one's heard of?" asked a clerk from the courthouse. Did he really challenge your ruling without offending you? Inquired a fellow judge during their weekly meeting. Even her own staff couldn't resist joining the conversation, peppering her with curious glances and hushed whispers whenever Marcus's name came up. At first, she brushed off the attention, focusing instead on her duties. But the more she thought about it, the more intrigued she became. There was something magnetic about Marcus, a quiet confidence that made him impossible to ignore. Her curiosity eventually led her to dig deeper into his background. She began by reviewing public records, piecing together fragments of information about his life before becoming a royal guard. What she uncovered surprised her. Marcus came from a family steeped in legal tradition. The Kanes were renowned barristers who had advised kings and crafted laws for generations. His grandfather had written several landmark statutes still in use today, and his father had served as a chief magistrate for decades. Yet Marcus had chosen a different path, enlisting in the Royal Guard shortly after completing his education. This revelation only deepened the mystery. Why would someone with such a prestigious lineage abandon a career in law? Was it rebellion, duty, or something else entirely? As Judge Hart delved further, she stumbled upon anecdotes shared by those who knew Marcus personally. A retired captain from the Royal Guard recalled how Marcus often carried a small leather-bound book filled with notes on legal principles. During long patrols, he would recite passages aloud, debating hypothetical cases with anyone willing to listen. Another colleague mentioned that Marcus frequently visited the Royal Library, spending hours poring over dusty law books late into the night. These stories painted a picture of a man driven by an insatiable thirst for knowledge, a man who saw the law not just as rules to follow, but as a living, breathing entity that shaped society. Despite the growing admiration for Marcus, Judge Hart couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to uncover. She decided to invite him to a private legal symposium she was hosting, an exclusive gathering of the brightest minds in jurisprudence. These events were usually reserved for seasoned attorneys and scholars, but she believed Marcus belonged among them. Her decision wasn't purely professional. Part of her wanted to see how he would fare when pitted against the best in the field. Would he rise to the occasion, or would the pressure overwhelm him? When the invitation arrived, Marcus examined it with a mixture of amusement and contemplation. He appreciated the gesture but hesitated to accept. His role as a royal guard was sacred to him, and stepping into the world of academia felt like crossing an invisible line. Still, he couldn't deny the allure of the challenge, or the opportunity to demonstrate that justice transcended titles and professions. After weighing his options, he penned a brief response. "I am honored by your invitation and will attend." News of Marcus's acceptance rippled through the legal community, sparking excitement and skepticism in equal measure. Some eagerly anticipated seeing him in action, while others doubted whether a soldier could hold his own against seasoned professionals. For Judge Hart, however, the real intrigue lay not in proving Marcus's abilities, but in understanding the depth of his passion for justice. Little did she know, this decision would lead to revelations far beyond what she had imagined, setting the stage for a partnership that would redefine their roles in ways neither of them could predict. Years turned into decades, and the legacy of Judge Eleanor Hart and Marcus Kane became woven into the fabric of the kingdom's history. Their partnership, once an unlikely pairing between a no-nonsense judge and a humble royal guard, had transformed the way justice was perceived and practiced. Though their paths eventually diverged, Judge Hart retiring from the bench and Marcus continuing his service until age claimed him, they left behind a profound impact that endured long after they were gone. In her final days on the bench, Judge Hart dedicated herself to mentoring younger jurists, sharing not only her knowledge, but also the lessons she'd learned from Marcus. She often recounted stories of their collaboration, emphasizing the importance of blending theory with practical wisdom. "Justice isn't just about laws written in books," she would say. "It's about understanding how those laws affect real people, how they shape lives." Her protégés carried this philosophy forward, ensuring that fairness remained at the heart of every decision. For Marcus, retirement wasn't an option. Even as his hair grayed and his steps slowed, he refused to step away from his duties. Instead, he took on a new role within the Royal Guard, training recruits in both combat and ethics. He introduced classes on legal principles, teaching young guards how to navigate complex situations with integrity. His lectures became legendary, filled with anecdotes from his years working alongside Judge Hart. Never forget, he would tell them, that your sword is not your greatest tool, it's your judgment. Together, their influence reshaped institutions. The reforms they championed set new standards for accountability, inspiring other kingdoms to adopt similar measures. Independent oversight committees, once considered radical, became commonplace, fostering trust between citizens and authorities. Laws governing public safety, property rights, and military conduct were rewritten to reflect clarity and balance, thanks to their tireless efforts. Textbooks began citing their work as examples of effective governance, ensuring that future generations understood the value of collaboration. Even after Marcus passed away, a quiet end befitting his humble nature, his memory lived on. A statue was erected in the courtyard of the courthouse, depicting him standing beside a scale of justice. Beneath it, an inscription read, "Courage meets wisdom. Duty serves truth." It served as a reminder of what could be achieved when passion and principle united under a shared cause. As for Judge Hart, she spent her twilight years writing memoirs, chronicling her journey from a stern magistrate to a believer in the power of partnership. Her writings became required reading for law students, offering insights into the complexities of human nature and the importance of adaptability. In one passage, she reflected on Marcus's enduring influence. "He taught me that justice isn't confined to robes or armor. It thrives wherever courage meets conviction. And though our roles differed, our purpose was the same, to leave the world fairer than we found it." Their story didn't fade with time. Decades later, historians still spoke of the guardian-judge duo who bridged divides and redefined justice. Plays were written, songs composed, and paintings created, all celebrating the unlikely alliance that changed the course of history. Parents told their children tales of Marcus and Judge Hart, instilling values of fairness, humility, and perseverance. Perhaps the most lasting testament to their legacy came during times of crisis. When disputes arose or tensions flared, leaders looked to the principles established by Marcus and Judge Hart. They remembered the importance of listening, of balancing authority with compassion, and of seeking solutions that honored both tradition and progress. Whether in courtrooms, barracks, or council chambers, their teachings echoed through the ages. In the end, what defined Marcus and Judge Hart wasn't their titles or achievements. It was their unwavering commitment to doing what was right. They proved that true heroes aren't defined by the roles they play, but by the lives they touch and the systems they improve. And so, their story lived on, not merely as a tale of two remarkable individuals, but as a beacon of hope for anyone striving to make the world a better place. Justice, they showed, was never out of reach. It simply required the courage to pursue it, no matter where you stood. Years passed, and the partnership between Judge Eleanor Hart and Marcus Kane continued to flourish. Their collaboration had become a cornerstone of the kingdom's justice system, earning them praise from all corners of society. Yet, as with any journey marked by growth and change, challenges arose that tested their resolve and ultimately revealed the depth of their commitment to justice. One such challenge came in the form of a controversial royal decree issued by the king himself. The decree granted sweeping powers to the royal guard during times of unrest, allowing them to enforce curfews, conduct searches without warrants, and detain individuals suspected of sowing dissent. While intended to maintain order, the measure sparked outrage among citizens who feared it would erode their freedoms. Protests erupted across the city, drawing attention not only from local leaders, but also from neighboring kingdoms watching closely for signs of instability. Judge Hart found herself caught in the middle of the storm. As a jurist, she recognized the need for measures to preserve peace, but she also understood the dangers of unchecked authority. Late one evening, after reviewing the decree's implications, she summoned Marcus to her chambers. "This is trouble," she said bluntly, handing him a copy of the document. "It gives too much power with too little oversight. If we don't address this carefully, it could undermine everything we've worked for." Marcus read the decree silently, his brow furrowing as he absorbed its contents. He knew firsthand the pressures faced by the royal guard during tense situations, but he also saw the potential for abuse if these powers were misused. "You're right," he admitted. "This isn't just about maintaining order, it's about protecting trust. Without that, no law can truly stand." Together, they devised a bold plan. Rather than outright opposing the decree, a move that could have been seen as defiance, they proposed amendments designed to introduce accountability. For example, they suggested requiring guards to log every action taken under the decree's authority, ensuring transparency. They also advocated for independent oversight committees made up of civilian representatives who could review decisions and investigate complaints. These changes aimed to strike a balance between security and liberty, preserving the spirit of the law while safeguarding individual rights. Presenting their proposal to the king was no small feat. Marcus volunteered to take the lead, knowing his position as a royal guard might lend credibility to their arguments. Standing before the monarch, he spoke with conviction, appealing not to fear but to wisdom. "Your Majesty," he began, "trust is the foundation of your rule. By implementing safeguards, we strengthen that foundation, showing our people that even in difficult times, their voices matter." To everyone's surprise, the king listened intently, nodding thoughtfully as Marcus laid out their case. Judge Hart followed up with detailed explanations of how the amendments would work in practice, addressing concerns about feasibility and enforcement. Her calm demeanor and meticulous preparation reassured those present, including skeptical advisors who initially opposed the idea. In the end, the king agreed to adopt most of their recommendations, issuing a revised version of the decree that included the proposed safeguards. The public response was overwhelmingly positive. Citizens appreciated the effort to listen to their concerns, and even critics acknowledged the improvements. For Marcus and Judge Hart, the victory reinforced their belief in the importance of dialogue and compromise. It wasn't enough to simply enforce laws. They had to ensure those laws reflected the values of fairness and respect. As the dust settled, their bond grew even stronger. Through every trial, they had leaned on each other, combining their strengths to navigate treacherous waters. Judge Hart admired Marcus's courage in standing up to authority when necessary, while Marcus respected her ability to find solutions that satisfied diverse perspectives. Together, they proved that justice wasn't about choosing sides. It was about finding common ground. Though their roles remained distinct, one serving as a guardian of the realm, the other as a steward of its laws, their shared mission united them in ways neither could have anticipated. As they walked through the bustling streets of the city, now quieter and more harmonious thanks to their efforts, they felt a quiet pride in what they had achieved. Yet, they knew their work was far from over. Each challenge they faced reminded them of the fragility of justice and the enduring power of those willing to fight for it. The collaboration between Judge Eleanor Hart and Marcus Kane began in earnest after the symposium. While Marcus had declined formal certification as a barrister, he agreed to serve as an informal legal consultant for cases involving royal privileges or military exemptions, areas where his unique perspective could make all the difference. At first, their partnership seemed unlikely. Judge Hart was methodical and disciplined, while Marcus operated with a more intuitive, adaptable style. But over time, they discovered that their differences complemented each other perfectly, creating a dynamic that proved invaluable. Their first major challenge came sooner than expected. A high-profile case erupted when allegations surfaced against several members of the Royal Guard, accusing them of misconduct during a routine patrol. According to reports, the guards had detained a group of merchants under questionable circumstances, confiscating goods without proper documentation. The incident sparked outrage among the townsfolk, who saw it as yet another example of unchecked authority. Public opinion turned volatile, with protests erupting outside the courthouse and angry editorials flooding newspapers. The pressure on both Judge Hart and Marcus was immense. For Marcus, the situation was deeply personal. On one hand, he felt a natural loyalty to his fellow guards, many of whom he had trained alongside or served with for years. On the other hand, he understood the importance of accountability and fairness, not just for the public's sake, but for the integrity of the Royal Guard itself. Walking this tightrope required finesse, and Marcus knew he couldn't navigate it alone. He turned to Judge Hart, seeking her guidance. Together, they devised a plan. Rather than rushing to judgment, they decided to investigate the matter thoroughly, ensuring they gathered all relevant facts before making any decisions. Marcus took the lead in speaking with the accused guards, earning their trust by approaching them, not as an interrogator but as a peer. His calm demeanor allowed him to extract honest accounts of what had transpired, revealing nuances that might have been overlooked otherwise. Meanwhile, Judge Hart worked behind the scenes, reviewing evidence, consulting legal precedents, and preparing arguments that balanced justice with compassion. As the investigation unfolded, a clearer picture emerged. It turned out that the guards had acted based on outdated protocols that were no longer officially enforced, but still lingered in training manuals. This revelation shifted the focus of the case from individual wrongdoing to systemic flaws within the system. Judge Hart seized the opportunity to address these gaps, proposing reforms that would modernize procedures and ensure clarity moving forward. When the final hearing took place, Marcus played a pivotal role in presenting the findings. Standing before the court, he spoke not as a defender of the guards, but as a representative of truth. He acknowledged the mistakes made, emphasized the need for reform, and outlined steps being taken to prevent similar incidents in the future. His words resonated with the audience, striking a chord of reason amid the storm of emotions. Even critics who had initially called for harsh punishments found themselves nodding in agreement. In the end, the outcome was fair and balanced. The guards involved received reprimands and additional training, while broader changes were implemented to prevent misunderstandings. The public, though initially skeptical, appreciated the transparency and accountability demonstrated throughout the process. For Marcus and Judge Hart, the victory wasn't just about resolving the case. It was about proving that justice could be served without sacrificing integrity or compassion. Their partnership grew stronger through the experience. Marcus earned newfound respect not only from his peers, but also from the community at large. People began to see the Royal Guard not as an unapproachable force, but as a group of individuals committed to upholding the law responsibly. As for Judge Hart, she marveled at how Marcus's blend of practical wisdom and legal acumen had transformed the way she approached complex cases. Together, they had shown that true justice wasn't about choosing sides. It was about finding solutions that honored both the letter and spirit of the law. Though challenges lay ahead, neither doubted their ability to face them together. Their bond, forged in the crucible of controversy, had become something greater, a testament to the power of collaboration and shared purpose. And as they walked out of the courthouse side by side, they knew this was only the beginning of a journey that would leave a lasting impact on the kingdom's pursuit of justice. The success of their collaboration in the high-profile misconduct case marked a turning point for Judge Eleanor Hart and Marcus Kane. Their partnership, once seen as an experiment, had proven its worth, earning them not only respect, but also trust from both the public and the legal community. Yet, neither of them viewed this as the culmination of their efforts. It was merely the foundation upon which they could build something greater. They began meeting regularly, exchanging ideas, and discussing ways to address systemic issues within the justice system. What started as a professional alliance soon evolved into a shared mission fueled by mutual admiration and purpose. One evening, after a long day at the courthouse, Judge Hart invited Marcus to her private chambers. The room, lined with shelves filled with legal texts and journals, exuded an air of quiet reflection. She gestured for him to sit, offering him a cup of tea before diving into the topic on her mind. "Marcus," she began, leaning forward slightly, "what if we took this further? You've shown me that your perspective is invaluable, not just for cases involving the Royal Guard, but for the system as a whole." Marcus raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What do you mean?" he asked, sipping his tea thoughtfully. "I'm talking about creating a formal advisory role for you," she explained. "Someone who can bridge the gap between the law and those it governs. Your experience gives you insight that no textbook or lecture ever could. Imagine what we could achieve if we combined your practical knowledge with my understanding of judicial processes." At first, Marcus hesitated. He had always believed his place was among the ranks of the Royal Guard, protecting the realm rather than shaping policies. But as Judge Hart elaborated on her vision of reforming outdated laws, clarifying ambiguous statutes, and ensuring fairness for all, he felt a spark of inspiration. This wasn't about leaving his post. It was about expanding his service to include a new dimension of justice. Over the following weeks, they worked together to formalize the arrangement. Marcus would remain a royal guard, continuing his duties as usual, but he would also act as a consultant for the judiciary, particularly in matters where military or royal privileges intersected with civilian laws. His role was unofficial, avoiding any conflicts with his primary responsibilities, yet impactful enough to make a difference. Word of this unique partnership spread quickly, drawing praise from unexpected quarters. Even members of the Royal Council expressed approval, recognizing the value of having someone like Marcus involved in such critical discussions. Their first major project under this new arrangement involved revisiting ordinances related to public safety, a contentious issue that often pitted the rights of citizens against the authority of the Crown. For years, these laws had been poorly defined, leading to frequent disputes and inconsistent enforcement. Marcus brought first-hand experience to the table, sharing stories of how certain regulations affected daily life for both guards and civilians. Judge Hart, armed with her expertise in legislative drafting, translated these insights into clear, actionable language. The process wasn't without challenges. Some officials resisted changes, fearing they might weaken the Crown's authority. Others argued that reforms would embolden dissenters. But Marcus and Judge Hart stood firm, presenting evidence-backed arguments that emphasized balance and fairness. They held town hall meetings, inviting ordinary citizens to voice their concerns and suggestions. These sessions revealed surprising common ground, proving that most people simply wanted clarity and consistency. When the revised ordinances were finally announced, they were met with widespread approval. Merchants appreciated clearer guidelines on trade restrictions, while guards welcomed standardized protocols that reduced ambiguity. Even critics acknowledged that the updates addressed legitimate grievances without compromising security. For Marcus and Judge Hart, the victory was bittersweet. They knew there was still much work to be done, but it reinforced their belief in the power of collaboration. As time went on, their partnership became more than just a professional relationship. They developed a deep camaraderie, rooted in shared values and mutual respect. Judge Hart admired Marcus's unwavering dedication to justice, while Marcus marveled at her ability to navigate complex systems with grace and determination. Together, they proved that true progress wasn't achieved through grand gestures, but through steady, thoughtful action. Though their roles remained distinct, one donning armor, the other robes, their goals aligned seamlessly. Whether debating legal principles in Judge Hart's chambers or walking side by side through the bustling streets of the city, they embodied a rare. When the day of the symposium arrived, Judge Eleanor Hart felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. She had spent weeks preparing for the event, carefully selecting participants who represented the finest minds in the legal field. Scholars, judges, and barristers from across the kingdom had been invited to engage in debates, share insights, and tackle complex cases. Yet, as she stood at the entrance of the Grand Hall, her eyes scanned the crowd for one person: Marcus Kane. Would he rise to the occasion, or would the weight of expectation prove too much for him? The venue was nothing short of impressive. High ceilings adorned with intricate carvings stretched above rows of polished wooden chairs. At the center of the room stood a large round table, surrounded by towering shelves filled with centuries-old legal texts. Attendees milled about, exchanging pleasantries and discussing recent landmark cases. When Marcus finally entered, clad not in armor, but in a simple yet elegant suit, heads turned. His presence commanded attention, not because he sought it, but because there was an aura of quiet confidence about him that drew people in. Judge Hart greeted him warmly, introducing him to several prominent figures. To her surprise, Marcus handled the introductions with ease, his calm demeanor putting even the most skeptical attendees at ease. "So, you're the man everyone's talking about," remarked a senior barrister, raising an eyebrow. Marcus simply smiled and replied, "I hope to live up to the stories." The comment earned a chuckle from those nearby, breaking the ice almost instantly. The first session began with a mock trial exercise, a hypothetical case involving disputed property rights. Teams were formed, and Marcus was placed on a team alongside seasoned professionals. As they huddled together to strategize, his teammates initially underestimated him, assuming he'd take a backseat role. But Marcus quickly proved them wrong. He listened intently, asked thoughtful questions, and then offered suggestions that revealed a depth of understanding none of them had anticipated. One teammate leaned over and whispered, "You've done this before, haven't you?" As the debate unfolded, Marcus took center stage, presenting arguments that left the audience spellbound. He didn't rely solely on technical jargon. Instead, he wove his points into compelling narratives, drawing connections between ancient statutes and modern-day applications. For instance, when arguing a point about land ownership laws, he referenced a little-known clause from a treaty signed 2 centuries ago, a clause so obscure that even the most experienced jurists in the room hadn't considered it. His delivery was smooth, his logic impeccable, and his passion undeniable. What truly set Marcus apart, however, wasn't just his knowledge. It was his perspective. Having served as a royal guard, he brought a unique blend of practical experience and theoretical insight to the table. While others focused on abstract interpretations, Marcus grounded his arguments in real-world scenarios, explaining how laws impacted everyday lives. This approach resonated deeply with the audience, many of whom nodded in agreement as he spoke. By the end of the session, the room buzzed with admiration. Even the harshest critics softened their stance, acknowledging that Marcus belonged among them. Judge Hart watched proudly from the sidelines, noting how effortlessly he commanded respect. During breaks, attendees flocked to him, eager to discuss his methods and hear more of his thoughts. Far from being intimidated, Marcus welcomed the interactions, engaging in lively conversations that showcased his quick wit and sharp intellect. Yet, despite the accolades, Marcus remained humble. When someone praised his performance, he shrugged modestly and said, "Justice is a team effort. I'm just grateful to contribute." It was this humility that endeared him to the group, earning him not only their respect, but also their trust. As the symposium drew to a close, Judge Hart approached Marcus with a proposal. "Your skills are extraordinary," she said. "Have you ever considered pursuing formal certification as a barrister?" Marcus paused, considering her words. "My place is with the Royal Guard," he replied firmly. "But if my knowledge can help bridge gaps between law and tradition, I'll gladly share what I know." Her heart swelled with pride. Marcus wasn't seeking recognition or titles. He was driven by a genuine desire to serve. In that moment, Judge Hart realized that his true genius lay not in his mastery of the law, but in his unwavering commitment to fairness and justice. And though he chose to remain a guard, his influence would ripple far beyond the walls of the courtroom, shaping the future of jurisprudence in ways no one could have imagined.